He said, I shall give you hunger and pain and sleepless nights. Also, glimpses of the heavenly life.
Any artist is going to go through good and bad.
When I chose to be an actor, it was not because I wanted to be famous, but because I wanted to make a contribution.
And it's had such a lasting impression on my memory.
Something about it caught the imagination.
100%. The universe often rewards us for those things.
What do you want to do? And I said, well, how about that?
Oops. Leonard Nimoy is an Emmy Award-nominated actor who played the iconic Mr. Spock in the original Star Trek series. TV Guide named Spock one of the greatest TV characters of all time. He's also an accomplished director, poet, memoirist, and photographer. Mr. Nimoy, welcome to Artist Talk.
Thank you for having me, I appreciate it.
And I'll try very hard not to fan out.
Okay.
And just stick to the questions, okay?
Okay.
So let's get into it.
Deal.
Your father did not want you to be an actor. He suggested that you play the accordion. Right. Why'd you choose not to?
He was a sweet guy. He couldn't understand how a person could make a living as an actor.
Right.
He came from the old country, what they call the old country in Russia,
right,
in a small village. And for him, actors were the people who came to town in a troupe, and they would do a performance in the middle of town. Everybody would gather around on a night, and then they would pass a hat to collect some money.
Yeah.
They would steal a loaf of bread, make love to the mayor's wife, and leave the next morning.
Okay.
That's what actors did. You know? So when I told him I wanted to be an actor, he said, learn to play the accordion.
Yeah.
I never followed that advice. So.
How did you feel when you were first presented the role for Spock? What was your first reaction?
I had mixed feelings about it.
Especially as an Aries.
Yeah.
A fellow Aries.
We're in the same territory. Yeah.
That's right.
I had mixed feelings about it. I was excited about some steady work because I hadn't had a lot of steady work for a long time. I was a freelance actor. On the other hand, I was concerned about what the makeup was going to look like.
The ears.
When I met, the ears specifically, yeah. When I met Gene Roddenberry, he told me a very interesting story about this character, which attracted me to the character, the idea that the character was going to be half human, half alien. And I thought that would be a very challenging and interesting way to develop a character. A character with an interior personal life that I could relate to, that I had feelings about.
Was it a challenge to play such a stoic character juxtaposed to Shatner's Captain Kirk?
It was, and it took me a little while to figure out how to do it, because my training was, as an actor, to use my emotions. And this was a character whose emotions were locked up intentionally. He had emotions. When we first started shooting, I wasn't ready to do that. I hadn't quite figured it out. And
how
I learned
to be an actor that emotes no emotion.
Exactly.
Which is genius.
Actors emote, that's right. This
Genius.
was a character who was non-emotional, or did not emote. The fact that Shatner was overt, was broad and theatrical, made it more interesting for me to be able to lay back and make comment on what was happening rather than act out on what was happening. So it took a little while, but I found a way.
The Vulcan salute, which is my favorite, was influenced by your experiences in the Orthodox synagogue.
Right.
Did you consider Spock to be rabbinical in any kind of way?
I didn't think of that, no. I wasn't thinking in religious terms, no. But I was looking for some magic. We were doing an episode where we were going to see Spock go to his home planet. And it was the first time we were going to see his planet, and the first time we were going to see other Vulcans. So it's important stuff. I'm looking for ways to add something to the Vulcan story.
You personally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as the actor.
Okay.
And I said to the director, I think it would be interesting if we can find some special thing that Vulcans do when they greet each other. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, humans shake hands, military people salute each other, Asian people bow to each other. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, how about that? He had no idea what it was or where it came from.
Wow.
But he said, okay. I first saw it done in a synagogue. I must have been 9 or 10 years old, sitting with my father There comes a moment where several men get up in front of the congregation on the stage and they chant a prayer. The prayer I learned later translates to, may the Lord protect you and keep you, may the Lord cause his countenance to shine upon you and grant you peace. It's in the New Testament as well as the Old Testament. They're yelling it in Hebrew. I had no idea what they were saying, but they were doing this with their hands to the congregation, both hands. Wow. Got their heads covered with their prayer shawls, and out from under the prayer shawls, they're sticking these hands doing this. I thought that's pretty magical.
I'll tell you what's really magical is that that's what you saw when you were 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
And somehow through the ether and through the actions of all of us as humans, somehow it was on a television screen, and I seen that as a child.
Yeah.
And it's had such a lasting impression on my memory, and anyone that knows anything about my music knows that that is absolutely like our salute. And then it comes from you.
Something about it caught the imagination.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you think it's all the right of like all actors and actresses to have some sort of creative control once they've been doing it for a while?
Well, there is up to a point. You have to do what's on the page.
Sure.
You're really dependent on the structure of the script, the dialogue. Talented writers are very valuable. And if you don't have the script to work with, it's pretty tough to work off a blank page and create a performance.
Sure.
Given that, you have a certain amount of leeway to try to develop moments for yourself, to find nuggets in there, nuggets of gold, where you can do something creative and add something of your own. So you don't just show up and stand there and say the lines. You're looking for a way to animate what you're given and to bring something to it.
What was the process? Like, what did you do to figure out how Spock would ultimately become the incredible, timeless, influential character that he's become?
Yeah. The first thing I had to learn to do, as I mentioned, was to find a way to be reflective rather than active, and to find a way to make comment, if possible, non-verbally, to be quiet, to stand still, listen, and really understand what's going on and find a way to make comment on it. And the first thing that I learned was a raised eyebrow can be very effective. If you just do that, people understood what the character is doing and thinking. You don't have to have an awful lot of dialogue to make that comment. And among other things, I thought that Spock and the Vulcans should be a hand-oriented people, that they should find ways to do things with their hands that perhaps were unusual and fresh. So one day when we had the Spock's parents on the show, they came to me and said, what would you suggest about the way we walk together? Instead of holding hands, I had them touching their fingers with each other like this as they walked, which created something a little special. Wow. So you're looking for ways to design the life of this person.
And you were a little concerned with the ears at first.
I was, because I took my work pretty seriously when I went to work on the show. And I thought, if this doesn't work, it could be a bad joke. In fact, I had a very good friend who was a good actor who I admired. He said, this is the choice you have. You can either do it with a makeup that so disguises you, so that when it's done, you take the makeup off and nobody ever knows you did that. Or you can do it in such a way that you are exposed and pray that it works. So I decided, if I did this heavy makeup and it worked, I'd be happy because people wouldn't know that I had done the work. It would be like somebody behind a makeup that you'll never see again.
That's right.
So I decided to go for the scary choice.
The universe often rewards us for those things.
That's right. If it scares you, it's coming from a place that might hit a creative button.
That's right. So you spent 2 years in the Army.
Yeah.
Do you think that influenced your approach to the show, which was largely and often like an allegory about war and peace?
That's an interesting question. My time in the Army was very benign. It was between wars. It was after Korea and before Vietnam. My feelings about war and aggression were developed earlier than that. When I was a kid, I grew up during the Second World War.
Wow.
So I was very exposed to what that was all about. Wow. We lost relatives, and I had friends and family who lost people. And from the time I was 10 to the time I was 14, we were at war, and in a really, really bad situation. So my attitudes about war were formed before I went in the Army. In the Army, I had a lot of infantry training, but eventually they put me in the special services and I was producing Army talent shows. So I had some experience as a producer and a director staging these shows. It was a pretty good job.
Wow. So this is where you got your preparation, okay. So Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, that was one of the films that you've actually directed.
Yes.
What do you think the message was in that film?
I was reading a book at the time called Biophilia by a Harvard biologist named Wilson. He talked in that book about keystone species being lost. He was saying that thousands of species are being lost every year on our planet, many of them never having even been recognized. They were just gone. We wouldn't even know they had existed. At that time, I was looking for a story idea for Star Trek IV. And I was intrigued with that idea that maybe a loss of some species on Earth could cause a cataclysmic event to take place. Something really terrible could happen if we lose a keystone species. So that's how I got to the whale story.
Wow.
Yeah.
After Star Trek, you fell in love with photography.
Yeah, well, long before, actually.
What drew you to photography as an art form?
Well, I started with it when I was a kid, about 10 or 11 years old. And a friend in the neighborhood showed me how to develop a roll of film and make a print. That you could do that yourself. It was a magical thing for me. So it was more the process than anything else. The subject matter wasn't terribly important at the time.
But you have some good subject matter, though.
Eventually, I found my way to using that process to do some more creative work. And in 1971, after I had finished Star Trek and a couple of years on Mission Impossible, I went to UCLA to start studying photography seriously under a very good teacher named Robert Heineken. And he led me to understand how to look for thematic ideas in photography.
Was that enough for you to leave acting?
No, as it turns out, the answer was no.
Did you think about it?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I thought for a while that I might just switch careers, that maybe I'd had enough of acting for a while. But I discovered that it would be a great way to spend some time and express some ideas, but I still needed to do some work as an actor and director.
There's a lot of controversy with the Shekhina photographs. How did you come up with the idea to combine God and the feminine form?
I guess controversy is appropriate. The images are sensual, and in some cases sexual. And when you mix that with religion, you're going to get some reaction.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to create controversy. I was looking for a way to express this aspect of the feminine persona, the feminine life, well, actually it goes back to this, which is I was told when these guys are doing that in the synagogue, I was told not to look. And you're not supposed to look because during that blessing that's going on, the Shekhina, the feminine aspect of God, supposedly comes into the sanctuary to bless the congregation. You don't want to see her because the light she's a deity, and that light could be very damaging and even fatal to a human being. So when I learned that, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to try to find some way to photograph her, to capture her, to see what she looks like, to find out what that being looks like.
Wow.
And that's why I set about with the camera, looking for the Shekhina.
Wow. Maybe it just came out at the wrong time. I think if you were to do that today.
Should I start all over?
Yes, you should. I think it'd be a great project to do. The photography collection, The Full Body.
Right.
Please, let's talk about that.
A lady came to me and she said, I'm a model. I'm a different body type than what you've been working with. Would you be interested in working with me? She was a very large lady, very dear lady, very intelligent, large body. I didn't quite know how to deal with that because that's not what I had been working with. I told my wife, Susan, what I just told you, and she said, you ought to try it. And this, again, was one of these situations where the question is, will you do something that scares you?
Right.
So I decided to go for it and make an effort. We shot some pictures of her, which turned out kind of interesting, I thought. They were almost like marble sculpture.
Right.
And whenever I showed those pictures of her along with the other work, those pictures got the attention. So I thought there's something going on there in our culture about this kind of a body.
Wow.
And I went to look for other women who had that kind of body structure. I found a group in San Francisco who were actually a burlesque group. They called themselves the Fat Bottom Review. They were a wonderful bunch of women who had a great joy in life and who were exciting in their figures and in their bodies, and I photographed them. And that's how the Full Body Project book came about.
Do you feel like people give you the gravitas as a photographer that you deserve versus Mr. Nimoy, the actor?
That's a mixed issue. In some areas, yes. In some areas, the answer would be no. I'm very pleased that there are a number of pieces of my work in museums now, and in a lot of people's collections. In some cases, there's no question that people are interested in my work because of who I am, based on Star Trek and other acting work that I've done. But there's also been enough recognition for the work itself that makes me feel satisfied about it.
Well, I know I'm going to become a collector, just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, your memoirs, I Am Not Spock, and I Am Spock. They're about like your conflicting relationship with that persona. Now, has your mind changed over the years?
You know, I Am Not Spock was a mistake in the title. When that book was published, a lot of people assumed, and I could understand that too, that the title said that I was rejecting the Spock character in Star Trek, which wasn't the case at all. It was just a mistake, and I'll try to explain that to you. I was writing a book about my Star Trek experiences at the time, and then I talked about the differences between myself and the Spock character. I was raised in a Jewish family. Spock certainly was not. I was raised in Boston. Spock was not. I have a brother who's 4.5 years older than me. Spock did not. My father was a barber. Spock's father was an ambassador. You know, there were differences. And I tried to explain how an actor goes about crossing those differences, coming together with the elements that will make the Spock character come to life. And when it came time to title the book, I suggested that as a title, I'm Not Spock. And the publisher said to me, and rightly so, it's not a good idea because it's a negative title and people might get the wrong idea. But I thought I was being clever, and I said, let's go for it because I think it's provocative. So we put the book out under that title, and it was a mistake. I actually say in the book, of all the characters on television, if I were given a choice of any character ever portrayed on television, I would choose Spock because of the opportunities that character presented in performance and what the character represented in the way of racial issues, social issues, cultural issues, intellectual issues, emotional issues. I really admire the character, and I would have chosen that character. But people got the wrong impression.
From the title.
Yeah, from the title.
Yeah, connotation is everything, an impression. You were given a public outreach award in 2010 from the Space Foundation. What kind of feedback have you gotten from scientists that you've inspired?
One of the greatest satisfactions of being involved with Star Trek and the Spock character is the feedback I get from a lot of people who say, I went into the sciences because of you and Spock and Star Trek. Because it was intriguing for young people. It opened up minds for young people. And that's very rewarding. That's the greatest feedback.
So did you have an interest in science before Star Trek?
I'm going to tell you a secret. I flunked chemistry in high school.
We are so alike.
I flunked chemistry.
Yeah, I was no good at science, and I actually did not care about science until like after I got out of high school. And that's when I started to care about it because I started to learn the things that I found to be interesting. Are you that way at all?
What created your interest in science finally?
I'm a huge fan of Carl Sagan. I saw Contact, and then that's when I discovered him and his work.
Sagan's a great teacher. Sagan leads you into the heart of mysteries.
Yeah.
And gives you a chance to get inside it and be surrounded by it. It's wonderful.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. But to me, I parallel you too, just so you know.
I'm very flattered.
So the new Spock was Zachary
Quinto.
Quinto,
Yeah.
Yes. Did you give him any advice?
he is a very intelligent, well-trained actor. He didn't need advice. What he I think he found useful was to be around for conversation about the work in general, about what makes a human being or a character tick. I think he's done a wonderful job. He's a really, really good actor. I admire his work. And I wonder if I can express what it means to know that you started a character almost 50 years ago that is still current. The character still works, and a very good actor has carried on that performance, carried on the life of that character. It's a big deal in my life.
What does the future hold for you?
Well, the Spock character, as you can imagine, opened up my life, personally and creatively. Created great opportunities for me to do work that I chose to do rather than work that I had to do to make a living. I had choices for the first time in many years, and still, to this day, I consider it a great opportunity, a blessing to live a creative life, to live a life that has to do with finding ideas and developing them and expressing ideas, and hopefully making a contribution to the human condition. Now that may sound pompous, but it's real for me, very real for me. When I chose to be an actor, it was not because I wanted to be famous, but because I wanted to make a contribution.
Purpose.
I thought I had something to offer and something that might be useful, and I wanted to get it out there. And I came across, eventually, a piece of writing that expresses the artistic condition, I think, brilliantly. It says, Edwin Booth, the actor, heard the solemn whisper of the God of all arts. He said, I shall give you hunger and pain and sleepless nights. Also, beauty and satisfaction known to few, and glimpses of the heavenly life. None of these shall you have continually, and of their coming and going you shall not be foretold. And that to me sums up the life of a creative person, what a creative life is. It's painful, it's exhilarating, it's difficult.
Any artist is going to go through good and bad because that's where they're going to get their material from.
That's right.
So
exactly.
They're both blessed and doomed.
And you never know which is coming next. So when you ask me what's in the future, all I can do is hope that some more great opportunities come along to express myself.
I'm such a huge fan. You have no idea. Thank you very much.
My great pleasure. I admire your work too. It would be wrong for me to leave here without saying that. You've had a great, accomplishing career. And still at it. Going strong.
I'm trying so hard.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good for you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I had no idea what they were saying, but they were doing this. With their hands to the congregation doing this. I thought that's pretty magical.
Anyone that knows anything about my music knows that that is absolutely like our salute.
A raised eyebrow can be very effective. If you just do that, you know.
Which is genius.
Remote, that's right.
And you were a little concerned with the ears at first.
If I were given a choice of any character ever portrayed on television, I would choose Spock.
Has your mind changed over the years?
Should I start all over?
Yes, you should. I think it'd be a great project to do. Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant,
I'm Eric Ripper,
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman,
the host of On the Table,
the host of Across the Board,
Host of ARTST TLK.
Host of Hooked Up.
host of the show Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend on the Reserve channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. Check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedbacks, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's like down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.